Good morning, welcome back. This is Daybreak and thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. So we'll be talking about the U.S. election and the race of a lifetime. We'll be focusing on the 7 key swing states and their impact on the election, the factors that are underpinning the American elections, and how this is shaping up on who will be the next occupant of the White House. Now, to point out this, it's very key that Kamala Harris, if she wins, becomes the first woman and of color to be an American president. Donald Trump wins for the second time, and he becomes the first convicted felon to be an occupant of the White House. So let's begin with the numbers and what informs what in this case. And this is where they are all pointing to, and it's the White House, where the next commander-in-chief of the United States will be an occupant for the next 4 years. And in this election, you have to cross certain magic line, which is the number that you're seeing on your screens at the moment, 270 electoral college votes. So when you secure that, that's the magic number either Kamala Harris and Donald Trump must get. So how does the electoral college system work in the United States? Now, each state is awarded electoral college votes based on its population. For example, in this case, the state of California, where Kamala Harris comes from, has 39 million people, and therefore it has 54 electoral college votes. Vermont has 650,000 people, and therefore has only 3 electoral college votes. In 2020, Donald Trump and Joe Biden spent 3/4 of their campaigns in the 6 swing states at the time. Now, let's talk about the swing states in this year's election in the United States of America. And we'll line them up so that you understand the 7 key swing states that will determine the election. They are Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Now, they are neither blue, which is a Democrat, or red, Republican. They are called the purple states in the United States. And this, they change over time from one election to the other, informed by shifting demographics and political views in the United States of America. So let's begin in that order, and we begin with Nevada. Now, most of the state is rural here. And because of its small population, Nevada has the smallest number of the electoral college votes in this election, only 6. It's also called the bellwether state, and it has significant impact on this election. That whoever won Nevada in 10 of the last 12 elections in the United States of America went on to win the presidency. Nevada is also America's gambling capital and has one of the highest unemployment rates. So we move on to the next, which is Arizona, and this informs a lot because it's also another key swing state in this election, and will have an impact on who becomes the next president of the United States. Now, the Southwest state is also known as the Great Canyon state and has 11 electoral college votes. Historically, it's been a red state. Now, hear this. In the last 70 years, it only voted for Democrats twice, Bill Clinton in 1996 and Joe Biden in 2020. And Biden in 2020 won by only 0.3%, and when he defeated Donald Trump. Another major factor in this state is immigration. Arizona shares a border with California, New Mexico, and Texas, which all share a border with Mexico down the south. In 2021, President Joe Biden gave Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now a candidate for the Democrats, one major overwhelming assignment, and that was to address the border crisis. Another issue in this state of Arizona is abortion. In June 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade, effectively returning abortion policy decisions to the states. 2 years later, in April 2024, the state of Arizona Supreme Court revived the 1864 total abortion ban. And it's therefore a key factor which will inform the outcome of the election in the United States of America. Let's head to Michigan, and it has an interesting stats here, and there are many factors that underpin this. It's an area also known as the Rust Belt, and it stretches from New York to the Midwest. Michigan is also known as a manufacturing state. However, its industries have been on the decline, and this has led to massive job losses because of the layoffs. But here is one interesting fact about Michigan. This state voted red, for the Republicans only twice in the last 32 years, in 1998 for George H. Bush and Donald Trump in 2016. Now, Michigan State has the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the United States of America. And the war in Gaza by Israel is a major factor here for the Arab Americans. So important is this state that Donald Trump held his final campaigns in this state. But I just want to remind you this, that Donald Trump in 2017 signed an executive order banning Muslims from 6 majority Muslim countries from entering the United States of America and effectively shutting the door on refugees and asylum seekers. The American Supreme Court overturned the order in June the same year. And another factor is therefore going to be very critical about Michigan. It has a white working class voters, and the state is home to 2 American automobile giants, the General Motors and Ford. So immigration is going to be a key factor here in Michigan, as well as manufacturing and jobs, which are very critical, especially for the Americans who live in this crucial state. So we head to North Carolina, and we take some bit of break here on the Magic Wall, then engage our panelists. It's located north of the state of Georgia. We'll be coming to Georgia in a moment as well, and has 16 electoral college votes. In the last 50 years, Democrats only won in North Carolina in 1976, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama in 2008. Now, the Democrats have an upper hand here, and this is the why. From 2011 to 2021, data shows that newcomers in North Carolina have been from California, New York, and New England states. Now, New England states is made up by Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont, which are all heavily Democrats. And its ethnic makeup is going to be very critical because they are made up by blacks and Latinos, who make up 90% of North Carolina's newcomers, as I have mentioned. Remember Arizona? Immigration is also an issue here because a majority of the population in this state is white. So let's head to the most crucial state of the 7 swing states, and we'll be coming back to the others because I'm heading to Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has the highest number of the electoral college votes among the 7 swing states in the United States of America. And it's the most important because it's the highest number of the electoral college votes among the 7 states that we are talking about. President Biden won here in 2020. Kamala Harris held her last rally in Philadelphia in this state. And one thing is worth noting. 20% of the population here in the state of Pennsylvania is above the age of 65 years, according to the United States of America Census Bureau. And this number exceeds the national average in the United States, which is 17%. Then now, the next assignment takes us to Georgia, which is also known as the Peach State in the United States of America, and it's on the coast state. It's called the Peach State because of its ethnic makeup and has 16 electoral college votes. Before Biden won here in 2020, Georgia wasn't and didn't used to be a swing state. And for the last 30 years, hear that, this state voted red, meaning for Republicans. The Atlanta metropolitan area has one of the highest number of African Americans in the United States of America. Unlike any other American state, Georgia has its own unique factors that will determine how it will vote, and they voted early in these elections. The state of the economy, immigration, and above all, democracy is very key here. Remember President Donald Trump's call to Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find him some 11,780 votes in 2020, a few days before the insurrection on the U.S. Capitol in Washington? That's how key it is. Then we finish up with Wisconsin, because this is also another important state in the United States of America. So after Georgia, then we head to Wisconsin, and let's call this state, because of its relevance as well as what it bears, given its significance and relevance, yes, the dairy land, because it's home to more than 5,000 dairy farmers in the United States of America. And there are more than 1.2 million cows, according to the state's Department of Agriculture. And it has 10 electoral college votes. Hear this. It's safe to assume that this is a blue state because in the last 32 years, Wisconsin voted for Democrats, except only in 2016 when Donald Trump had won the elections against Hillary Clinton. In Milwaukee, which is in the state, Republicans held their nomination convention where Donald Trump was given the nod. And Kamala Harris held her first rally in Milwaukee in Wisconsin after Joe Biden had dropped out of the race. And that's how it's very key and the relevance this bears. Therefore, let's now link up with Joanna LeBlanc, who joins us from Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. And she is an adjunct professor at Harvard University in the United States of America. And Joanna, good morning from Kenya. I know it's an evening in the United States of America. And given the breakdown of the early voting and the results that are coming in, we know, of course, automatically there are some traditional red and blue states that are not in contest here, but of the swing states and the early results streaming in, looks like a tight race to the White House, is it?
Certainly, but before I respond to your question, I am an adjunct professor at Howard University. It is a historically Black college located right here in the nation's capital. So it's not Harvard, it's Howard. But in any event, as you really well articulated what's at stake and what the Electoral College stands for and what the different states, battle states represent, you are absolutely correct. I think that we are in a very critical place in this election. I think that it could go in any given way. Right now, we're seeing that Mr. Trump is leading in the polls, and Harris is trailing behind him. But it's still hard to make a call as to who's going to win the election. However, when you look at some of the pollsters online, they're already predicting that Mr. Trump is more likely to win this election. But the reality is that I think that there are a number of factors that are impacting VP Harris. One is that she literally had 100 days to run a campaign. 100 days. That's unprecedented, right? And I think given the circumstances, she did her best. Her campaign managed to have raised more than $1 billion, which a great deal of those money went towards campaigning, obviously, but also communications to ensure that the public really understood her policy position on issues like the economy, reproductive rights, immigration, and so on.
Thanks, Joanna. We'll be coming back to you because you will be with us throughout the course of this broadcast. And back in the studio, I also have Ahmed Hashi, is a governance commentator. Dr. Dan Ojwang lectures contemporary issues. Joanna has been Joanna's classmate in the United States of America. Good morning, Dr. Dr. Hassan Kanenje is from the Ho Institute of Strategic and International Studies. Dr. Good morning. And we also have Advocate Nelson Harvey with us here in studio, formerly served as the president of the Law Society of Kenya. Gentlemen, is it right, Dr. coming to you first, Ojwang, to title this Race of a Lifetime? Kamala wins, becomes the first woman president of color. Donald Trump wins, becomes the first convicted felon to hold the White House in the United States of America. Interesting, is it, in many aspects?
Very interesting. And beyond that, being the president that left and came back, right? Mm-hmm. And the one of the eldest. So there's like three things is taking, and of course, Kamala also, not just first female, but the second person who moved from being deputy president to president. Because remember, initially, Biden did something unprecedented. He's probably the second person to have stopped his second bid in favor of someone else. So both of them, it's historical in very many aspects. And of course, for some of us, we have been up. The results are trickling in. Yes. And you can see that the Americans are taking this election very, very seriously. They can't agree almost in anything. Yeah. Of course, you know, as Kenyans, we admire ideology, but I think ideology is enslaving. So that you find that issues like abortion become the main thing, guns rights become the main thing. And so if there is an issue that a Democrat say this is white, a Republican will say this is black. You know, unlike in Kenya where we are a little riverine and we are flexible because we are not boxed into serious ideological issues. We can debate a little bit and come together. Yeah. They have done survey. Actually, they did a survey before this where they will pick issues and tell people, where do you lean? And they'll say, I'm okay with this issue. Once they're told these are Democrat issue, if you are Republican, those are bad. If you are, yes. Yeah. So it's exciting. It's a lot of momentum going. Remember this time, Trump, there's twice assassination attempt on him. Yeah. And he has pulled through, and with a lot of momentum towards the end. We are watching the swing states, as you're saying. Yeah. We are seeing a lot of slow trickle, but so far you can see that both sides are very hopeful.
Dr. Kanenje, the polarizing question of the American politics has been a key factor, is it? Given what has happened since 2020 when the insurrection on U.S. Capitol happened, and then thereafter the divisions along the ideological rift which has been playing out in the public, and have these issues largely overshadowed the real issues, which were immigration, abortion, foreign policy, and the state of the economy?
Yes and no, because those issues are still actually influencing people who are going to the polls, so who went to the polls yesterday. And some places are still closing, because of the time difference between us and them. And the United States generally votes a lot more on domestic policy as opposed to foreign policy. Correct. And politicians have always found it convenient, especially when you deploy social issues, they tend to create the kind of divide that you may need to mobilize. It did not start today. And so, for instance, abortion is something that is very emotive, and sometimes people are going to forget about economics and vote on social issues. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, it's something that Americans are very passionate about. Perhaps most of the world may not understand. We have to understand the history of the United States. It's a country that has probably more guns than human beings in private hands. So the issues like economy is something that is important. Now, interestingly, Democrats have actually done fairly well in terms of job creation. However, because of some of these social issues, as well as certain aspects of foreign policy, especially on the Democratic side when it comes to Gaza, I think is playing a significant role. And something unprecedented has happened in the last 10 years. You saw the leadership of Muslim, group and Arab groups in Michigan endorsing Donald J. Trump, in part because of the dissatisfaction. Number two, you're witnessing something we have not seen since George W. Bush. His panics are breaking heavily for Donald Trump. And that is not very good news for Kamala Harris. But also it didn't help that Joe Biden stayed in the race for too long. Yeah. And I think considering their lack of response to some of things, especially in the final year of the campaign, to respond to them in a way that can satisfy Americans, it may actually end up costing them. Yeah. But though whatever they're talking about, generally those are the issues that tend to shape American. Yes, Ahmed.
Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of the United States, in his notes on Virginia, said that he feared 200 years before today that America would turn into an electoral despotism. If you remember, the United States was founded out of running away from European despotism. So when they were crafting the American Constitution, they went out of their way to make sure that their citizens, the balance of power between the state and the citizens was unequal. So, for an example, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is a direct translation of citizens who are supposed to protect themselves against the state because of the European experience of despotism that they ran away from. Now, Mr. Trump represents the avenging angel who has come to break down this electoral despotism that has been part of the United States culture now for the last maybe 100 years, with the two-party systems being virtually indistinguishable. And the Democrats are going to lose this election, as I predicted, not because they did not learn or understand what American politics is today. But precisely because the American people have always wanted to vote for an outsider, because they believe that the state, the United States government, is an enemy and not a friend to the people of the United States, or they have deep suspicions about it. And I firmly believe that the Republican Party now has been turned into a cult. It is not even a movement. People are voting for Donald Trump for various psychological issues. For an example, the African-American men, staunch, bedrock Democrats who got up to the United States from the Southern Reconstruction right after slavery and the Civil War, are now going to vote. I hear 30% of them may vote for the Republican Party. That's a disaster. White women who are supposed to vote for Kamala Harris are saying on the telephone that they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. But when it goes to the ballot box, it's a totally different story. So what does this tell us about the patterns of American democracy and American voting habits? For me, it says that people have single-issue politics in the U.S. now. For an example, in Texas, you could bring all the other issues you want, but immigration is at the very top of it.
Okay. I'll bring in Joanna shortly, but Council Harvey, we have seen an array of issues that will determine who becomes the next president. Of course, that depends on the results that are coming in. But is it surprising in any way that America, a model of democracy for many, in exporting its values for democracy, human rights, is struggling by itself in holding and affirming that very same value of democracy, given the stark divisions among its makeup of the society?
Yeah.
It is doubtful that it's struggling. I think I will say the American democracy has reached maximum saturation. And to that extent, I must agree with Ahmed. To the extent that you see, like, the Republican Party has become almost cultist.
Yes.
But one thing that we must recognize, we don't expect much change. The American presidency has always been a male WASP, a West Anglo-Saxophone Protestant. It is least expected that Kamala will become president. But fundamentally, there appear to be a protest vote against the Democrats for the sole reason that there appear to be no substantial development. There appear to be no real issue that arose during the presidency of Joe Biden. And the fact that he overstayed his welcome, notwithstanding all indicators that he was not going to win against Donald Trump, tends to discredit the candidature of Kamala to a great extent. But when all this is said and done, it is a manifestation of how even the best democratic state in the world can appear to be so simplistic when it comes to an election.
Yeah. And Joanna, then, talking about this, because if you look at the factors that are underpinning the 7 key swing states in this election, you look at the multiracial makeup of some states, of course, informed by abortion, others by immigration, and the decline in jobs, like in the states of Michigan, known as a manufacturing hub. Has this literally driven the energy out for the Democrats, given the late entrant Kamala Harris into the race following Biden's disastrous debate in Atlanta, Georgia?
The Democratic Party was flawed for replacing Harris with Biden so late in the game. I think that the signs were there that President Biden was not going to be able to win against Donald Trump, at least not this time around. And they should have taken the necessary steps to either have Harris as the candidate or have an open convention, which is what people like former President Barack Obama wanted, Speaker Nancy Pelosi wanted, but in the manner in which that Biden announced that he would not seek re-election, and then went ahead and endorsed Kamala Harris for the presidency, the party had no choice but to support her in that effort, because the party did not want to appear as though it was the party of dysfunction, whereas you have the Republican Party, the main candidate is a convicted felon, but yet the party rallied behind him in order to secure the presidency. So that's that. But also, too, when you look at places like Michigan, as you talked about earlier in your introduction, you have a great number of Muslims, Arabs, who have said they are discontent with the way that the Biden-Harris administration has handled the Gaza and Israel conflict. And therefore, they have decided to be uncommitted voters, meaning that they would not vote for a Harris, and in some cases, not a Trump. But what that ultimately means is a vote. Not voting for Harris means an automatic vote for Trump, which is what happened in 2016. There were folks who did not vote, and as a result, Hillary Clinton lost, and Trump won the presidency, right? But the reality is that when it comes to the issue of Israel, it's a bipartisan position that Washington has. Washington will always support Israel, irrespective of what happens, because Israel is the eyes and ears of Washington in the Middle East, and the U.S. has spent a significant amount of dollars in supporting Israel's defense. So a Trump presidency would not look any different when it comes to issues around Israel. In fact, it was under the Trump administration that the capital of Jerusalem, of Israel, was moved to Jerusalem, right? Okay. So we know these are facts, but as a way to protest against the Democratic Party, those have said they would not vote for Harris. But also, too, when it comes to issues around the economy, people are gravely concerned. And I think that VP Harris spent a great deal of her time talking about reproductive rights. Yes, it's an issue. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has created restrictive reproductive laws across America. That is indeed a fact. However, Kamala, I think that more and more Americans wanted to hear more about a more robust economic plan that would address inflation, the tax issues here in this country. Okay. You're talking about people who are working 2-3 jobs, but yet are not making livable wages to afford an apartment or even buy a house, because the cost of living has increased so much here in this country. Okay. Whereas with the opponent, Mr. Trump, he focused a great deal on the economy and the immigration as a way to divide, but as a way to also get his point across to the American people. Right. And that is appealing to a lot of people here in this country.
Okay, and has that been then a burden, given we have seen household Democratic names, including the Clintons, the Obamas, who have come to Harris's aid when the campaigns were conducted across the country? Does that then give us the burden? Because Harris was given the assignment by Biden to look into the issue of immigration first. Abortion is also a concern. And then the war on Gaza by Israel. Has she literally carried that burden from Biden into the campaigns? And is this likely going to be one that may have consequences?
Listen, the issue around immigration is one that is very nuanced, right? And that needs a comprehensive approach. Harris alone could not fix our immigration issues here in this country. We have a border crisis. That is a fact. In the United States, we have domestic laws, and we also have international laws. When folks are fleeing from persecution, they can come to the border and seek asylum and enter into parole into the United States. However, when you have folks who are seeking economic refuge, who are leaving their home countries because of economic issues, unfortunately, there aren't any laws that could protect them at the U.S.-Mexico border. And I've been to the U.S.-Mexico border myself, and there are countless people from the African continent, from the Middle East, from the Latin America, from the Caribbean, who are looking to enter into America to seek better opportunities. And also, too, you have immigrants who are migrating into the country. Some are migrating lawfully and some are not lawfully. Mm-hmm. And Trump has created this narrative that those migrants or those immigrants, they're taking your jobs, right? While it may not be true, right? We're talking about, when we look at, in particular, the undocumented immigrants, there are about 1.6 million here in this country. Trump has announced that on day one, he will deport them, which will have a significant impact on the American economy, because those are folks who are working jobs that traditionally the average American would not take.
Okay.
But nonetheless, I think that when it comes to these issues around immigration, we have to be a little bit more nuanced around them, because it is indeed U.S. failed foreign policy that has impacted some of these countries to the point where people can no longer live and they have to seek refuge to the United States of America.
All right.
So VP Harris alone could not solve this issue, and nor will Mr. Trump.
Okay, Dr. Juan, coming to you. We have seen then Donald Trump, she talked about basically Donald Trump lying. And that's lying about Haitian immigrants eating pets in Springfield in the Ohio.
Eating the dogs.
Pets. But that again explains, is it the gullibility of voters and misinformation in this campaign? And this is not the third world country. This is the United States of America, Dr. Juan. And clear, very deliberate misinformation and misleading statements made by Donald Trump and the Republicans about the state of immigration and some other issues that are of concern to the American people.
Eating the cats.
Yeah, the Republicans have a way of oversimplifying complex issues.
Very true.
And but they speak to the heart. But I also think, even as my classmate is talking about misleading, the Democrats have taken Americans for granted. And I was in Chicago last week. I've seen the anger among their assumingly base, like minority. Because if you have lost working Americans, most of the people who are doing blue-collar jobs, then you take an issue like abortion and make it the center of your messaging. You take issue like sexual minority and sexual rights and make it the center of the issue. Right now, you can see the referendum in Florida has flawed the issue of abortion and has flawed. So the world is more conservative than the Democrats, than it exists in the Democrats' mind. That's number one. Number two, a number of their typical bases are finding their issues in the second tier, and the Democrats running with a few issues which probably favor celebrity or important to people in Hollywood and all that. And the minorities are calling them out for that. For example, they are saying, you are the party that stands for human rights, at least you claim to be. How quiet have you been when even aid cannot reach children in Gaza? And how quiet have you been when you are seeing all this and vetoing any resolution in the UN that is calling Israel to account and Israel to support the two-state solution that is clearly in the UN? So I don't think it's so much about lies. I think that, when Hillary lost, her excuse was the men did not allow their women to vote for me. You are taking people for granted. You are assuming people have not understood what you stand for. Right now, they are asking Kamala Harris, you are deputy president. What is the new innovation you are bringing? And she has not distinguished herself from Biden. She has not distinguished herself at all. Even if you find people will say, yes, Trump is a liar and all that, but you tell me single policy that Harris stands for, even on any issue, none. Okay. And that has have an implication on what is going on. Finally, I think, in my view, when you look at the issue like immigration, when you look at the COVID, the economy is not doing very well. And here you are, you don't talk about economy, you want to talk about issue of abortion rights and how you are going to help the world and spread it around in the world. Okay. And you are assuming that that will resonate with women. That is a big assumption.
Okay. Dr. Kanenje, given that at the moment Donald Trump is in the state of Florida, he won in that state, and he is with two interesting personalities, Elon Musk, the owner of X, and Nigel Farage, who championed the exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union in the Brexit campaigns in 2016. Does this tell us about the rise of conservatism in politics in modern democracy?
Good question.
Yeah, I would say conservative populism. You know, it's something that's not just happening in the United States. It is, if you look at the recent elections in Europe, actually they seem to be moving on the other direction. But I do agree that I think the world is a little bit center-right in a number of places, as you know, I think contrary to what perhaps Democrats would want to believe.
And the media.
Yes. Number two, I would like to correct some perception with regard to jobs, you know, for instance, and the people who don't have jobs. But Biden has the lowest unemployment rate since Harry Truman, at 4.1. Since Harry Truman, there is no other president who has come that close.
And he had the
Obama left at 7.
He had the highest inflation since Harry Truman.
Yes. And so, in terms of unemployment, you know, I think that is something we need to put it out there. But the world is generally moving, and especially the West, because of the dissatisfaction with the status quo and inability to address or to speak to certain things. And I do agree with Prof here. The key constituents of the Democrats, I think they're feeling that the party was not listening to them. They were focusing especially on certain social issues at the expense of things that these people care about. I had always argued that in 2016, Donald Trump did not win the election. Hillary Clinton lost. And part of it because she was seen as a warmonger. And even the current Democratic Party, because a lot of people who are on the liberal left, MoveOn.org like us, who were there at the time, you know, we didn't volunteer the way we had volunteered in 2012, you know, and 2008. You know, we didn't donate the money. We didn't get our people to vote. A lot of my students were in state. Literally 7 out of 8 stayed at home. And that trend, we're seeing it increasingly, you know, happening because of the dissatisfaction that the Democratic Party has not been focusing and speaking to the key interest of their constituents. What the Democrats needed to do is, number one, not to try and win over Republicans, conservatives, they're not going to do that, is speak to the issues that you know, align with the constituents so they can drive up the vote. And that is the vote they're losing, and that is why the Hispanics are now breaking, you know, for Donald Trump. Some blacks now in certain areas, they're increasing. But then there's also a fundamental aspect. Kamala Harris, she's a nice person, but she has never really distinguished himself or aligned himself with regard to identity as a minority.
Excellent point.
You know, she's not Barack Obama. Yeah. And so she's just some kind of an Oreo cookie, you know. Don't kill me for those who are working in the United States, because
it's a terrible thing to say.
You know? Yes, really. And so there are a lot of people who are minorities who don't actually feel very connected to her, even though she might have been to Howard, you know, and everywhere else. But that is something also to consider.
Her rediscovery has been one question, and then the burden she carried from the shoulders of Biden has been another issue. Ahmed, just hang on. Council Harvey, I'll come back to you after the break here on the broadcast. Joanna is still staying with us. She is live for us from Washington in the United States of America. Still early, and some of the key swing states are counting their votes, and of course not forgetting the blue states traditionally, under red states traditionally, and the numbers will be trickling in, and who will be the next president of the United States of America remains the main question. A consequential election in a race of a lifetime in the US. We are back with more after the break. Stay tuned.